everyone. Welcome to Season 3 and our very first season as Body Peace.
We're so glad you're here as we begin this new chapter.
I'm Jennie Kramer.
And I'm Nina Manolson.
If you've been with us since the beginning, you'll remember we started as Her Story on a Plate, exploring food, bodies, and culture. But no matter the topic, we always came back to the same thing, our relationship with our bodies.
So it made sense to make our name reflect what we were truly talking about, body peace. This is the heart of our work, supporting you in navigating life in a body you may not always like or respect, especially in a culture that's often critical and demanding, and learning how to build a relationship with your body that's kind, respectful, and real.
Each episode brings honest conversations with each other and with our guests about self-image, societal expectations, aging, diet culture, and the deep healing that happens when we come home to ourselves.
You'll hear personal stories and clinical insights that invite you to feel seen, supported, and gently encouraged on your own body peace journey.
We're so glad you've joined us. Welcome to Body Peace. Hi, Nina. It's Jennie. Nice to see you. In preparation for today's show, right, I watched the entire documentary called Fit for TV, The Reality of the Biggest Loser. I feel like the biggest loser for watching it, but it's interesting. I remember the series at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I watched parts of it at the time. Seeing it put together in this way, the best way that I can describe my reaction is, on the one hand, physically nauseated, and on the other hand, not surprised. I'm wondering what your initial reactions are, and I'd love for us to sort of unpack some of this a bit.
Well, first of all, I watched it because you texted me and said, I watched the first half hour and I'm physically sick. And I was like, let's talk about it.
Yes. Yes,
So
because
then,
if anybody else invited you to do something that would make you nauseous, would you do it? No, but you, of course, took
no,
that
but
invite.
Jennie asks, I'm like, yes, let's do it. Excellent. So I watched it. And again, I wasn't surprised, but my overall take home message was how people will do anything in order to fit our cultural ideal of acceptability in regards to their bodies, and how much people can prey on that vulnerability. And one of the quotes that I could not forget is one of the contestants said that Jillian Michaels said to them, "You just made me a millionaire."
Yeah, she said a few things to people. In fact, one of the things I think she said to someone was, "Take a load off, the secret's out, you're fat."
Yes.
It's just the most, unkind. I mean, listen, I'd give my left thigh to interview her because I'd love to know what her thinking was. And I would imagine that she and Bob Harper, for that matter, both
Mm-hmm.
thought in the beginning that they were going to do a service to get rid of this scourge, which was called, being overweight. And then I think, like all the rest who were behind this series, it just got so big, and it became a multi-billion-dollar enterprise. And so who's going to step in the middle and say, well, I'm not sure we should be doing this? I will say, though, to his credit, Dr. Robert Huizinga, who was the medical director, kept protesting all throughout. He stayed with it, right? But he kept protesting all throughout on the calories per day they were having, on the number of hours. At some point, if I recall, I think it was Danny, who's a very compelling interview. He was someone who had lost, I think, the most amount of weight in the entire show. And of course, it's all back and more. And he said something like they were eating 800 calories a day and burning 6,000. Now, to the untrained ear, that's like, well, okay, I'll take those odds. That sounds like a good number. Their metabolisms got ruined.
Yeah. Their metabolism
Harm was done.
absolutely got ruined. But it was an interesting thing, that whole conversation about how the show ruined their metabolism. And one of the contestants said, to be fair, we've already been on a million diets our
Yeah.
whole life.
Yeah.
And so our metabolism has been damaged, right? There's a new study that came out in March that talked about how weight cycling is so damaging to our bodies. And so here you have people who have vulnerable bodies because they have been white cycling their whole life. You're taking that vulnerable body and that vulnerable psyche because here I am, I will do anything. I think her name, I'm not remembering,
Tracy,
Tracy said,
Tracy.
I thought maybe it would fix me. It would fix my marriage and it would fix me.
She said, "I cheated death and I still wanted to lose weight." Imagine this.
Yes.
She Her organs are shutting down.
Hmm.
She's airlifted to a hospital. She is so sick, she literally almost dies.
Hmm.
And to her credit, right, her level of commitment is also to be noted. She's like, "I'm not gonna let this beat me, I wanna go back." She was greeted initially with, "Oh my gosh, so good to see you," and then later, she was not greeted well by her fellow team members who thought the whole thing was very dramatic, but she thought to herself, imagine this, and this is, I'm sure, relatable to many people, "It would be better to have cheated death and go back to this torture than to go back to the torture of my marriage, where,
Yes.
by the way, I'm not sure I'm not at fault because of my body size."
Right, right. So that piece, right? And her story, I think, is more, everybody's story is complex, but her story has this under layer of what sounded like an abusive marriage. And so here was her door out. And so I can understand her saying, you know what, I'm going to stay. Someone's going to, feed me and take care of me. Not feed me very much, but feed me, take care of me, house me, and I will be away from a toxic environment. But there was this drama that was fabricated really for television, right? All of the stories of them being pushed to throw up because it's good TV. All of the explosions and the outbursts and the acting out of having low blood sugar, having pain in your body, not feeling supported, being yelled at. That was one of the things that really struck me the whole time
Yes,
was
yes.
I was like, wow, these people are being abused. And it makes me think about one of the things that Aubrey Gordon said, who was the
Mhm.
expert who spoke about this impact and the how this putting in the context of what it is to be a large person in our society. And she said, the belief once you are fat that I am allowed to treat you however I see fit. Abuse is good for you. I was like, that's it right there, that somehow it's okay in public to be yelling and abusing somebody because they're in a large body, which then goes into the minds of every single person, whether they're in a large body or not, that that's an acceptable way to be treated and to treat oneself.
It's so interesting that you mentioned Aubrey Gordon. I mean, she's sort of been a bit of a hero of mine for a while. She's written some wonderful books. She's got a lovely podcast. I think it's called Maintenance Phase. But of course, only listen to ours. But she's really been a hero. And it was like the only voice of reason.
Mhm.
It was very, listen, I always like to believe in the human condition. I like to believe that people essentially mean well, right? But as I listened again and again and again to the producers, to the people who created this, there was no reflection. There was no regret. There was no learning. There was really not like, would I have done this differently? Except I think maybe the executive producer said, if I had it to do over again, maybe there would have been no prize money. Okay, great. But that all that would have done was possibly reduce the number of people who tried out for it. But if the
Mhm.
methodologies were the same, it was watching abuse.
It
And I think
was.
the thing that really struck me, and it must have struck me at the time, but I think I just sort of erased this whole thing from my mental history. What struck me was that it was not just the trainers who were so verbally abusive, and by the way, at some point, teammates who became
Yes.
less than supportive of each other. The public. The
Yes.
public was watching
Vicious.
this. It reminded me of like the Roman Empire, right? Like
Mhm.
watching people in the pit.
Gladiators. Mhm.
that's really what it reminded me of,
Mhm.
where everybody got the right to weigh in, if you will,
Mhm. Mhm.
on the personalities, and that one shouldn't even the things that were said about Tracy, this poor woman who
Yeah.
was almost killed from this, to say things like, "Well, she shouldn't have survived, and, maybe it is her in the marriage." I mean, it just I forgot it because I think it was
Mhm.
so offensive to me that I
Yeah.
couldn't retain it.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it really speaks to how being in a large body is the last place that it's totally okay. I don't know that it's the last place, but it's one of the last places that it's totally okay to be completely judgmental, completely vilify somebody, and completely judge somebody from simply their outsides.
Well, there's another point you're making, I think, which I think is easier to forget. We use the expression marginalized communities all the time. And generally, when you ask somebody, what do you mean by that? Well, they say things like, well, we mean genders and races and creeds and nationalities. But guess what? People in specific body sizes are also marginalized.
Yes.
Only that seems okay.
Right.
It's because the thinking is all those other things that categorize you are just sort of who you are. This is something you choose. Well, I got a newsflash. That ain't true either. Because to your point about weight cycling, if somebody were to actually accept the way their body is naturally created, within a reasonability of making sure that you're just feeding yourself well and moving that body that's meant to be moved, that's where weight cycling would not take place, and that would actually add years to people's lives, in my opinion.
And that piece about blame, you have control. I know this happens in your practice also, but in my practice, women come and they are done. They don't want to be dieting anymore. They want to find body peace. They want to find a different kind of relationship with their body. And there's still the belief, well, I was the one who picked up the fork. So I am to blame, right? And the impact of the blame and shame on us personally and us culturally and how it changes the way we actually treat humans is appalling.
Well,
And
and let's compare that to, um, how, let's say, people who have addictions to, let's say, drugs or alcohol or gambling or whatever that may be, right? How do we treat them? Well, there was a time where they
mhm,
were the blight of
yeah,
the earth, right? Now, it's more like, well, it's a disease, and so we need to treat them with a little more kindness. At the end of the day, I know that s our relationships to food and body are not, quote, "addictive," but there is some similar brain mechanism that occurs with process addiction, with just the brain readying itself for a behavior it has become familiar with. And why did it become familiar with that behavior? Well, let us count the ways, right?
right. It
All
works. It's
things that we
worked in the
talk about,
past.
right, all the
It's
things we
worked.
talk about.
Yeah. One of the things I
I found it ironic that at the how did they spend the last 10 minutes of the documentary? I knew it would make their way in there somewhere. GLP-1s, right?
yes,
To be
right.
clear, and I wanna make this clear to anybody who's in earshot of this podcast, you and I have made the point over and over again that body autonomy and how you perceive it is top of the list priority all the time, and we have no judgments, and people get to do whatever they wish, and we hope they don't harm themselves. That said, here we are looking at maybe the only 2 or 3 people in this whole thing who looked like they kept the weight off, only to say at the end, "Well, actually, I've been cycling ever since this thing, and the only thing that I found that could keep me at some steady state were the injectables."
Yep.
Okay, good,
Yep.
okay. If that's what you choose, sure, who am I to judge? But it's ironic because now that's the thinking, and it's
Well,
still
there
about
was
a particular body size.
absolutely, and one of the I don't know if it was one of the producers or the trainers, but they said if it was now, it would be a show about people injecting themselves every week, right? But ultimately, we need to talk about the money. right? We need to talk about the money because one of the things you said, and that was so clear in this documentary, is how this show kept going for 12 seasons. Why? Because it made money, because people,
Billions.
billions, because
Billions.
there was all the products, there was all the spin-offs of in all different countries, and people watched. So there was tons of money being made. And then I was like, okay, after 12 seasons, we're getting too much backlash now. And maybe we're getting a little unpopular, so we'll let it go. But what would happen, right? Now the money is being made in the GLP-1 and the GLP-1 like drugs. Okay, great. Now we can make money there.
Yes.
So it's like
And
we
by the way,
have
the rest of the diet industry is suffering, but it's all relative. There are still people who there was someone on the show, I think, who also said, I think it was Danny who said, I can't be at peace with the injectable. I can't do that. And so however I'm gonna go about living my life, it's not gonna include that. So okay. But it's still $1 billion industry. I found it very interesting. I'm very conscious of karma these days. I don't like to wish anything badly on anyone, even if they're doing harm to an entire country. But that said, I found it interesting that Bob Harper had a pretty severe heart attack in 2007. He reflects in the documentary, if you haven't seen it, that, um, you know, he sort of had this insight about what it was to feel helpless.
mhm,
And yet, up until the moment that he talks about that heart attack, which is literally, I think, in the last, 30 minutes of the whole documentary, he's strident about how he treated people and he wouldn't do it any differently. And he was very defensive about the whole thing.
mhm. Right, he
And then what
stood
does he
by it,
say?
all
And
the
then what does he
abuse.
say? The one person who didn't reach out to him after his heart attack was Jillian Michael.
Mhm.
I don't know what to make of it. I don't want to make stuff up about it, but it's
Yeah.
really sort of fascinating.
It is.
Kind of
It
fascinating.
is. The other thing that he said that I want to drill into a little bit is he said, if you've struggled with your weight, you are never going to get that monkey off your back. That
Mm,
monkey is
mm.
going to be part of you for the rest of your life.
What an
And I
aw
think
what an
that it's an awful statement. It's an awful, awful statement. It basically means you can't change the relationship that you have with your body. You can't heal the relationship you have with your food. And obviously, you and I, this is the work that we are committed to and are passionate about it. And I just want to say that's not true. I think that there's still in me, I come from a dieting background and there's sometimes a part of me that gets into comparison,
of
right?
course.
But it doesn't impact my authentic, caring, nourishing relationship with my own body. So that monkey is not on my back. And I've seen hundreds of clients really shift that relationship. So that idea that we are imprisoned in the relationship with our body, I think it just speaks to the surface of can you keep the weight off or not?
Mhm.
Which isn't the point. The point is, how do you treat yourself? And are you treating yourself like a human or are you treating yourself like one of those trainers treats everybody, which is abusively?
Yes, 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 yes to all of that. And it's important to put this in the frame of trauma because
Mhm,
what happens when any of us are traumatized, in whatever ways we are traumatized, and to whatever degree we have been traumatized, we try to make sense of it. And the way that we try to make sense of that is almost like a very childlike instinct, which is to make it less threatening by saying, well, it must have been my fault. I must have done something wrong or
mhm,
that wouldn't have occurred.
yep,
Because then it's almost like a more manageable thought. And so in so doing, we now invite and encourage any behaviors that will reinforce the idea that, oh, this must have been my fault. And it's just to watch these people who, God bless them, they really thought they were going to do something great for themselves here. To watch them be abused in this way was one of the most difficult things to watch. And I kept thinking to myself as I was watching this, what was my reaction at the time? And I believe it was the same.
Yeah,
I believe it's why
absolutely.
I've erased it sort of from
Absolutely.
my memory. There's
No, I
no way
remember
at
going, "This
any
is
time.
horrible."
Yeah, there is no way that at any time I thought this was a worthy project. It's worth saying out loud too, what took them down? Not people in large bodies, someone in an anorexic body. So, this gal, I think her name was, Rachel Fredrickson. She had lost some immense amount of weight, and when she came out for her final weigh-in, it was stunning even to the trainers. Imagine that the trainers thought she was too thin, and the producers thought she was too thin, and it turned out within seconds, so did the world think
Yes.
she was too thin, and
Yeah.
that was ultimately the thing that took them down. Why they
Yeah.
didn't renew. Plus the fact that Jillian Michaels lied about the fact that she had given people caffeine pills
Caffeine
in
pills,
order
yeah.
to accelerate their weight loss.
But we're speaking about right, we're speaking about the impact of eating disorders on people who are in this show.
Yes,
Suzanne, one of the participants, said, "I came back with a
I came
severe
back.
eating disorder. I avoided social settings. I avoided going out." Right? So it's like, what harm? We were watching harm being done. And the
Imagine
whole
ima
world went, "Oh, this is a great show."
Well, sure. I mean, it got compelling, like, to see, "Oh, how much did they lose this week? How much
Mhm.
do" are they fighting with each other, cat fight, isn't that what we all isn't that what men love to say? "Oh, cat fight," right? I when I think of the bravery of Danny was the one who somehow in their statistics had lost the most weight in a season of anybody of all the seasons. The numbers don't matter, but it was extraordinary, and he then went on this media whirlwind because, the second that happened, he was on talk shows, and then he wound up on the program called The Doctors, where they did plastic surgery to remove excess skin, and then he comes back on the show to show, the work of all the I mean,
Okay,
look.
so now you're expanding the conversation,
Yes.
which is the cultural obsession that our
Yes.
bodies need to be different at
Yes.
any cost of mental health, physical pain, financial burden, right? It just is like, I become speechless. It's mind blowing that our culture preys on people who are sucked into this idea that their body must be different. And it's touted under the umbrella of health.
So now, as we always do in our programs, I hope, we want to leave people with something positive, but also something that's practical, right? The one thing that I want to say is that if you're in earshot of this podcast and you have not seen this documentary, may I beg you not to watch it. Of course, your curiosity may get the best of you, and so go ahead, have fun. But I really, it felt almost traumatizing to watch this. And, I can watch it in a particular context. I knew why I was watching it. I'm glad it was done because it really sort of brought to light what was really going on behind the scenes in case anybody hadn't figured it out. But it didn't, as documentaries are meant not to do, it didn't come to a conclusion like, oh, here's what there is to do. I do want to say, though, that diet culture is not something that's going to go away anytime soon. The cultural, societal perception of what's a good body and not a good body, we all live within that. But you know what? This is about declaring, no matter what age you are, no matter what gender you are, no matter what stage of life, no matter where your station in life is. It's about saying to yourself at some point, you know what? This is exactly who I am in this moment. And
Mm,
when I think about this remarkable body of mine, the things that it has been put through, that's the ways it has served me,
mhm,
whatever those ways are, and you know personally what those ways are, I think I'm going to give my body a break here, and
mm.
I'm going to be kind to it in all the ways that I can. I'm
Yeah.
wondering what your thoughts are.
Yeah. And what you're speaking to is compassion. How do we bring self compassion into a relationship with our body, with our food, with our reflection in the mirror, right? How do we change the conversation? Because we were trained into a conversation ultimately of body hate. That's what we were trained into: body criticism, body shame. So, how do we actually shift the conversation? And what you just said is a very powerful first technique, which is, wow, my body's been through a lot.
Mhm.
And it continues to house my whole being, my soul, my spirit, my brain, my creativity, my zest for life. It's all contained. This is the one house we get. So,
You know,
how do you
I
want to
don't
treat it?
yes, I wanna just use a real life example very, very quickly. I had a client a long, long time ago who, had all the complaints about her body and all that she hated about it, and she had a whole history. And then she was in a very horrific car accident, and the car accident caused something like 65% of her body to be burned. And she was left, yeah, I mean, she almost died, right? She's alive, but she was left um, quite scarred emotionally, physically. And I will never forget her saying to me, if I could have gone back in time 30 seconds before that accident and somehow have prevented it, but come out of it with the insight I have now, I would have loved my body just the way it
Mm,
was. I would give anything to have that body.
yeah.
Now, I don't think we all need to visit a burn unit in order to be appreciative of the bodies we're in, but it's a very stark example that we don't know what we have until we don't have it anymore.
Mm, yeah.
That's true of relationships too, isn't it?
It is. It
And
is.
loved ones,
Absolutely.
all that. Yeah.
It is. But it is that practice of coming back into, I get to be in this body. Right? I get to have this life. Even if it's hard, even if it's a struggle, even if we're dealing with weight stigma and all the things that come with living in a larger body, I still get to be in this body and this world. And I work with women who have very complex relationships with their bodies and complex medical bodies. And still to come back to that practice of, wow, I get to wake up. How cool is that?
Yes, I get to wake up. I get to greet the new day, even if the new day sucks, even if the new day has a lot of stress attached to it, even if the new day may or may not feel fulfilling, even if, it feels like, I'm going through the same thing every day.
Yeah.
I get it. We get it. We get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is the body that you have.
There's one phrase that somebody, I think it was Tracy, she said, what we were trained into on the show was, you can't trust your body.
God. Yes.
And and we can in certain ways. It's unpredictable. People get diseases, lots of things happens, car accidents happen. And yet we can trust that this is home.
Yes. I think it would be appropriate for us to end in the words of Aubrey Gordon, who said, "Mm, imagine what it would be like to be seen as a person and not just a body." Thank you, my
Thank
friend.
you, Jenny.
Hearty
Thank you.
conversation.
Yummy conversations, important conversations. And thank you, everybody who's listening.
We're so glad you joined us on this episode of Body Peace.
Stay connected as we continue exploring what it means to live in your body with more ease, trust, and care by subscribing to Body Peace on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen.
Be sure to visit us at bodypeacepodcast.com for special bonus content for those on our mailing list.